Most of us walk through life believing success is about doing more, achieving more, and proving ourselves louder than the person next to us. But what if the real power isn't in what we do or how much we achieve, but in why we do it? The greatest leaders, the most inspiring voices, the people who leave us speechless. They don't just tell us what they think, they help us see who we can become. This isn't about motivation that fades tomorrow. It's about clarity that lasts a lifetime. Today, I want to challenge the way we measure influence, the way we define leadership, and the way we show up for the people around us. Because when you understand your why, you don't just speak. You move hearts, you shift perspectives, and you leave a mark that words alone cannot capture. Most people focus on the zammers, what the F, how, what they want to achieve, and how they plan to do it. It seems logical because that is how we are taught to think. We are taught to look at goals, to set strategies, to measure progress in tangible actions. But here is the truth. The most influential leaders and the most memorable voices in history never started with the what. They started with the why. They understood that people don't buy into what you do, they buy into why you do it. The what is important, the how is necessary, but the why is what inspires. It is what moves people from passive listeners to passionate believers. When you start with why, you are not just explaining what you do, you are giving people a reason to care. Think about the difference between someone saying, "I sell books," versus someone saying, "I believe knowledge should be accessible to everyone, and that is why I share stories with the world." Both statements describe the same activity, but one connects to the heart, the other just to the mind. One fades into noise, the other stands out and sticks. The reason is simple: the human brain is wired to respond emotionally before it responds rationally. Inspiration always precedes logic. That's why starting with why is not just a technique, it is human biology in action. Consider some of the leaders who have left entire generations speechless. They rarely began by explaining their strategies or their products. They began with a cause, a belief, a vision of the world as it could be. Martin Luther King Jr. did not stand in front of thousands and declare, "I have a plan." He said, "I have a dream." His dream was not about numbers, steps, or policies. It was about why things had to change. And because he started with why, people didn't just hear his words, they felt them. They carried those words in their hearts, repeated them, shared them, and acted upon them. That is the power of why. When you start with why, you also create alignment. People want to follow leaders who reflect their own values, not just leaders who tell them what to do. When a team understands the why behind their mission, they stop working just for a paycheck or a promotion. They begin to work for something bigger than themselves. That sense of belonging, of contributing to a shared belief, transforms organizations. It turns companies into movements and leaders into legacies. But starting with why requires courage. It means being willing to stand for something even before you know how it will all unfold. It means putting belief before certainty, vision before details. Many shy away from this because they think they need every step mapped out before speaking their truth. But the most inspiring leaders are those who share their why even in the face of uncertainty. Their clarity of purpose becomes a light others want to follow, even when the path ahead is unclear. The why is also what sustains you. When obstacles rise, when setbacks come, when progress feels invisible, the what and the how are never enough to keep you moving. Only the why gives resilience. Only the why makes struggle meaningful. Athletes endure pain not because of what they are doing, but because of why they are doing it. Entrepreneurs push through rejection not because of how they are building their companies, but because of the belief that fuels them. It is the why that turns exhaustion into perseverance, failure into growth, and challenge into opportunity. And in the end, the why is what others remember. Long after people forget the details of what you said or the steps you outlined, they will remember how you made them feel. They will remember the sense of purpose you awakened within them. That is why the greatest leaders always begin from the inside out, from why to how to what, not the other way around. They know influence is not about telling people what to do, but about giving them a reason to want to do it themselves. That is what makes words unforgettable and leaders truly timeless. Leadership has often been misunderstood as a position of power, authority, or control. Many assume that once you reach the top, you finally have influence over others. That leadership is about being in charge. But true leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of those in your charge. It is not about power, it is about service. The greatest leaders do not ask, "How can I be served?" They ask, "How can I serve?" That shift in mindset is what separates leaders who demand obedience from leaders who inspire loyalty. When you see leadership as service, everything changes. Instead of looking for followers to boost your own status, you start looking for ways to elevate the people around you. The measure of your success becomes not how much power you accumulate, but how much potential you unleash in others. The best leaders build environments where people feel safe, where they can grow, where their voices matter. In those environments, people don't just complain because they have to. They commit because they want to. History is filled with examples of leaders who chose service over power. Think about the military commander who eats last, making sure every soldier under his care has food before he does. Think about the mentor who invests time and energy into developing the next generation, even when it doesn't benefit them directly. These leaders are remembered not for how much authority they had, but for how deeply they cared. Service creates bonds that outlast commands. People forget orders, but they never forget how a leader made them feel valued. Leadership as service also means taking responsibility. Power says, "I'll take the credit when things go well." Service says, "I'll take the responsibility when things go wrong." It is the leader who steps forward to protect their people, who shoulders the blame so others can keep trying, who earns trust that no title could ever demand. That trust is the foundation of real leadership. Without it, you may get compliance, but you will never get commitment. With it, people will follow you through uncertainty, sacrifice, and even hardship, not because they are forced to, but because they believe you are in it with them. One of the most profound aspects of servant leadership is that it inspires reciprocity. When people see a leader willing to serve them, they naturally begin to serve one another. The culture shifts from self-interest to shared interest, from competition to collaboration. A team led by power alone might achieve short-term results, but a team led by service creates a ripple effect of trust, loyalty, and innovation. People go above and beyond not because they are told to, but because they want to contribute to something larger than themselves. Choosing service over power requires humility. It means admitting that leadership is not about being the smartest person in the room or having all the answers. It is about listening, understanding, and creating space for others to shine. It is about recognizing that leadership is borrowed. It exists only because people choose to follow. And people don't choose to follow someone because of their rank, they follow because of their character, their care, and their willingness to put others first. At its core, leadership as service is not soft or weak. It demands more courage than authoritarian leadership ever could. It takes courage to put others before yourself, to sacrifice your comfort for their safety, to prioritize their growth over your ego. But the reward is profound: a culture of trust, a team united by purpose, and an influence that lasts far beyond your tenure. True leaders know that their legacy will not be measured by the power they held, but by the lives they touched and the people they empowered. That is why leadership is never about power. It is, and always will be, about service. Authenticity is often misunderstood as simply being honest or transparent, but it goes much deeper than that. Authenticity is about alignment. When what you believe, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. People are drawn to leaders who are real, who do not pretend to be flawless, who are willing to show their humanity. Perfection may impress for a moment, but it creates distance. Authenticity, on the other hand, builds connection. When you show up as yourself, with your strengths and your struggles, people feel safe to do the same. And it is in that space of realness that true inspiration is born. We often think that to inspire others, we must project an image of strength without weakness, confidence without doubt, success without failure. Yet people rarely connect with perfection. They connect with imperfection because it feels human. A leader who admits, "I don't have all the answers, but together we can find them," is far more inspiring than one who pretends to know everything. Vulnerability does not make leaders weaker, it makes them relatable. It tells people, if I can try, stumble, and still move forward, so can you. That authenticity sparks courage in others far more than polished appearances ever could. Think about the leaders, teachers, or mentors who have most deeply influenced you. Chances are, they weren't the ones who always seemed untouchable. They were the ones who were real, who showed you both their vision and their humanity. They didn't just preach values, they lived them in their daily actions, even when it was inconvenient or difficult. They didn't just celebrate their wins, they shared their lessons from failure. That openness is what made their words credible and their leadership inspiring. Authenticity also requires self-awareness. To be authentic, you must first know what you stand for, what your values are, what you believe in at your core. Without clarity on that, it's easy to fall into the trap of imitation. Copying someone else's style, mimicking their strategies, chasing their version of success. But inspiration does not come from being a copy of another. It comes from being fully, unapologetically yourself. People may not agree with everything you say or do, but they will respect the consistency of your character when it reflects genuine conviction. In organizations, authenticity creates cultures of trust. When leaders are authentic, employees feel permission to be themselves too. They no longer waste energy hiding their flaws or pretending to be perfect. Instead, they bring their full selves to the work they do. This unleashes creativity, strengthens collaboration, and fosters loyalty. A culture rooted in authenticity is one where people know they are valued not for who they pretend to be, but for who they truly are. That is a powerful foundation for both performance and fulfillment. But authenticity is not about oversharing or using vulnerability as a performance. It is not about dramatizing every flaw or making transparency an excuse for lack of growth. Authenticity is about being real in service of others, not in service of ego. It is about aligning your actions with your words so consistently that people don't have to wonder who you really are. Over time, this consistency turns into credibility, and credibility into inspiration. What makes authenticity so powerful is that it cannot be faked for long. People are remarkably skilled at sensing when someone is putting on a mask. Pretending eventually cracks under pressure. Authenticity, however, holds steady because it is rooted in truth. And when people see that truth, they are inspired not because you are perfect, but because you are proof that realness and integrity can still thrive in a world full of pretense. Inspiration does not come from trying to appear flawless. It comes from showing up as your real self, and by doing so, giving others the permission and the courage to do the same. Trust is often spoken about as if it is something that can be built overnight, a matter of one inspiring speech, one grand gesture, or one brilliant success. But real trust does not appear suddenly. It is not the result of intensity, of rare but dramatic moments. Trust is the slow accumulation of consistent behavior, repeated again and again, in both the big and the small. Just like drops of water filling a jar, it is the daily choices, the ordinary actions, and the quiet demonstrations of reliability that make people feel safe enough to rely on you. Consider relationships in our personal lives. We do not trust a friend because of one extraordinary act. We trust them because they show up for us again and again, Because when they say they will be there, they are, because their words and actions match consistently over time. In the same way, within organizations, trust is not earned by the occasional flash of brilliance or a single success. It is built when leaders behave with integrity every day, when they prove through repetition that their people can depend on them. Consistency, not intensity, creates stability. Many leaders fall into the trap of thinking that one powerful motivational speech will earn loyalty, or that one bold initiative will prove their reliability. But the truth is, people do not judge us by isolated events. They judge us by patterns. They notice whether we keep promises or break them. They notice whether we listen with patience or dismiss with arrogance. They notice whether we show fairness in small decisions when no one is watching. These repeated behaviors form the foundation of trust. And once that foundation is strong, people will follow willingly, even in times of uncertainty, because they know the leader's character is predictable. Consistency matters most when it is hardest to maintain. In challenging times, people look to leaders not for intensity, but for steadiness. A leader who panics, shifts direction constantly, or changes their tone depending on the situation cannot build trust, no matter how well-intentioned they may be. On the other hand, a leader who remains consistent in values, consistent in care, consistent in accountability, becomes a source of calm in the storm. People are drawn to that steadiness because it reassures them that they are not being led into chaos, but guided with clarity. Think of it like physical fitness. You do not get fit by going to the gym once for 9 hours. You get fit by showing up every day for 20 or 30 minutes over months and years. Trust works the same way. One grand effort cannot build it. Only the repetition of small, steady actions can. And just like fitness, the benefits compound. Over time, consistency becomes credibility, and credibility becomes loyalty. What makes consistency so powerful is that it demonstrates authenticity. Anyone can put on a performance once, but no one can fake consistency. If your words and actions align day after day, people begin to believe that what they see is truly who you are. That belief is the essence of trust. It is not about being perfect, because perfection is unsustainable. It is about being dependable, showing up as yourself, and honoring your commitments with enough regularity that people know what to expect from you. Ultimately, trust built through consistency becomes the invisible glue of teams, families, and organizations. It makes people willing to take risks, to innovate, to speak openly, because they know they are operating in a space where reliability and honesty prevail. Leaders who seek intensity may impress in the moment, but their impact fades quickly. Leaders who embody consistency may not always dazzle, but their influence endures, because trust rooted in repetition is stronger than trust sparked by spectacle. In the end, it is not what you do once that defines you. It is what you do consistently that determines whether others place their trust in you. Success is often measured by results, profits, achievements, recognition. But great leaders know that before success can be sustained, there must be a foundation of safety. Safety is not just physical, it is emotional, psychological, and cultural. It is the feeling that within a team or community, people can speak openly, take risks, and even fail without fear of humiliation or punishment. When people feel safe, they bring their best selves forward. They collaborate, they innovate, they share ideas that might otherwise remain hidden. But when safety is absent, people retreat into self-preservation, and creativity is replaced by caution. Leaders create safety by showing that they will protect their people, not expose them. They make it clear that mistakes are opportunities for growth, not reasons for exclusion. In such an environment, failure is not fatal, it is part of the journey. Think of a workplace where people hesitate to speak up because they fear criticism or blame. Even the most talented individuals will hold back. Now imagine a culture where leaders encourage questions, celebrate experimentation, and protect their team when things go wrong. In that space, people feel free to stretch themselves, and extraordinary results follow naturally. Creating safety also means fostering a culture of belonging. Human beings are wired to crave acceptance. From ancient tribes to modern organizations, our survival and success have always depended on community. When leaders make people feel like they belong, they unlock loyalty and trust that cannot be bought. A team that feels safe with each other will push through adversity together because they know no one will be left behind. A team that feels unsafe will scatter at the first sign of challenge because everyone is only looking out for themselves. Safety is not built through words alone. It is built through consistent actions. It shows in the leader who takes responsibility when things go wrong instead of shifting blame. It shows in the manager who defends their team from unfair criticism. It shows in the mentor who listens without judgment, making it clear that no concern is too small to be heard. Each of these moments reinforces the message: you are safe here. Over time, that message becomes ingrained in the culture, and people begin to operate with confidence rather than fear. Consider the opposite organizations where fear dominates. In those places, employees are constantly looking over their shoulders, hesitant to try new things, afraid to make mistakes. The focus shifts from contribution to survival. People stop thinking about how to do their best work and start thinking about how to avoid being blamed. Fear may create short bursts of compliance, but it never creates lasting excellence. Safety, on the other hand, generates commitment, loyalty, and the courage to go beyond what is expected. The most inspiring leaders understand that their role is not to demand excellence first, but to create the conditions where excellence can flourish. Just as a farmer cannot force a seed to grow, but can create the right soil, water, and sunlight, a leader cannot force greatness, but can nurture an environment where it emerges naturally. Safety is that soil. It is the environment in which potential takes root and grows strong. Without it, even the most talented individuals cannot sustain their performance. With it, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary outcomes. When leaders create safety before success, they ensure that achievements are not just temporary victories, but stepping stones to something greater. Safety builds trust, trust fuels collaboration, and collaboration drives lasting results. People may forget the specific achievements of a leader, but they never forget how that leader made them feel, whether they felt safe to be themselves or pressured to pretend. And it is always in the environments of safety, not fear, where the seeds of true and enduring success are planted. Achievement on its own is fleeting. No matter how big the accomplishment, how shiny the award, or how high the milestone, time has a way of moving on and leaving it behind. What endures is not the achievement itself, but the impact it creates. Influence that lasts is never about being remembered for what you owned or accomplished in the moment, but for how you changed people, how you shifted thinking, and how you left the world different than you found it. That is the difference between success that fades and influence that endures. When people look back on leaders who shaped them, they rarely recall the exact targets they hit or the quarterly goals they achieved. Instead, they remember how those leaders made them feel, the lessons they instilled, and the values they embodied. Influence becomes lasting when it imprints itself on the lives of others. A teacher's influence does not end in the classroom. It continues in the actions of the student years later. A mentor's influence is not measured in the advice they gave in the moment, but in the courage they sparked that guided choices long after. Influence is impact that outlives the achievement. This is why leaders who chase recognition often burn out or fade into irrelevance, while leaders who focus on impact build legacies. Recognition depends on attention, but impact depends on service. The applause of the crowd eventually quiets, but the lives touched by your example continue to echo your influence. A company can win awards and break records, but if it hasn't left its people better, its customers valued, or its community uplifted, those achievements will be forgotten as soon as the headlines change. On the other hand, Even a quiet act of leadership that changes someone's perspective or restores their confidence can ripple for years, influencing people they may never even meet. Enduring influence requires intentionality. It asks the leader to look beyond the immediate gratification of success and ask, what will remain when I am no longer here? What will people carry with them after my words are forgotten? These questions shift focus from short-term achievement to long-term significance. They push us to invest in people, in values and culture, not just in numbers. Because numbers decline, markets shift, records get broken, but values carried forward and people empowered endure. True influence also comes from aligning your actions with principles that withstand time. Trends and tactics may change, but integrity, empathy, courage, and vision remain timeless. A leader who stays grounded in those values leaves behind a model for others to follow. Even when achievements fade into history, those values continue to guide. It is why certain names, figures of service, compassion, or vision, still inspire generations long after their tangible accomplishments have been surpassed. Their influence did not depend on a single moment of success. It depended on the consistency of their impact on human hearts and minds. Another key to lasting influence is multiplication. Influence grows when you empower others to lead, to carry forward what you've instilled in them. If your achievements die with you, they were never more than personal victories. If your impact lives on in others, then your influence becomes generational. The best leaders are not those who simply leave behind trophies, but those who leave behind leaders. They measure success not by how much they achieved in their own lifetime, but by how much they equipped others to continue after them. At the end of the day, the world does not remember every accomplishment, but it does remember every transformation. You may not recall all the titles of the books you've read, but you remember the ones that changed you. You may not remember every speech you've heard, but you remember the one that moved you. In the same way, people will forget what you achieved, but they will never forget how you influenced them. That is why the most powerful form of leadership is not achievement that ends with you, but influence that outlives you.